If your business phone rings and nobody answers, your marketing did not fail, your business did. Today, on this episode of Humans of Growth, I'm joined by Daniel, who's one of the VPs over at ServiceDirect, to break down the future of lead generation for local service-based businesses. Now, while we put this in the context of home services, this really applies across industries. Today, we are digging into the future of lead generation, how consumer behavior, trust, and technology are reshaping the way that service-based businesses grow in a landscape that is becoming more and more impersonal due to automations and AI. So if you run or even just support a local service-based business, this episode is required listening. Let's dive in. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm a certified human.
A real in life human. We're not just numbers or random faces on a screen.
Not a really good AI yet.
Not yet. It's coming eventually at some point. So tell me a little bit about ServiceDirect.
Yeah, so ServiceDirect, we're pretty much a ragtag crew. There's about 35 of us now, and we've been growing super fast. But, for us, it's always been about balancing growth with intentionality and who we want to be as people and how we want to work together as teams. So while we've been hiring nonstop for the last handful of years, it's always been about how do we find that right kind of cultural fit so that we can all drive this thing together. And I think the end result of that has been a genuine caring by everyone about what happens to each other. And no one really says, oh, that's not my job. Everyone says like, well, how can I help? Or how can I make your life a little easier because I actually know you and care about you? So I'm really proud that we've been able to build this together. It's now past our 16th, 17th year. And we've been, blessed to grow quickly, but without some of the trappings of growth that can happen to companies that I've seen a lot.
Yeah, because you guys are a little bit different. Y'all are not a traditional marketing agency the way you would expect when it comes to all things lead generation. Could you explain a little bit of how you guys work?
Yeah, definitely. So we're more like a marketplace that's driven by technology. So we build essentially the public square where the marketplace meeting can happen between all sides. And in a lead generation marketplace, there is people who have a ton of leads because they have web properties or advertising campaigns that they're good at finding people who need services. And in our case, we really specialize in local service providers. So that's like HVAC, plumbers, even legal or medical fields, but really especially the home service providers. And that's been our bread and butter and our expertise forever. So then on the other side of that marketplace, you need buyers. And that would be a local customer who has a job that they need done, and they need a trustworthy, good service provider to execute that job. So we help those two sides, the sellers of the calls and the buyers of the calls. The buyers are the service providers themselves who want to connect with potential customers. So their entire job is to just pick up the phone, and they don't need to know anything about marketing. They don't need to be experts in SEO or anything like that. All they need to be successful is to consistently pick up the phone when it rings. So we own all the local phone numbers, and our technology pipes the phone number directly through to our clients. So from the perspective of the customer, the person looking for a plumber, they don't know anything different. All they know is somebody trustworthy is answering the phone who is a plumber. And then they can tell them what their problem is. And the plumber's job now is to convince them that they're the right person to fit their needs. And then, they can book an appointment. So all that is handled by our technology, and our clients can see all of it in real time and in a completely transparent way. So we've built that over the years, and that business is nationwide. So there's thousands of clients all across the country. We serve every major area, including small towns, and then also Canada. So really pretty much anyone who needs a local service provider can find one through our network. Okay. And, our goal is that there's a happy person on each end of that transaction. I spent a lot of time traveling, and one of the places that I've always loved was Istanbul, where they have these ancient marketplaces that have been there since BC times, right? Yep. And there's this feeling and notion that when you're doing a bargain or a business deal in a marketplace like that, neither side should feel ripped off, and both sides feel like they got something out of the equation, and they walk away both happy. So in a sense, that's been our goal, is we want to be that conduit. And we know that if all sides of this marketplace are happy, then we grow as a business. So that's our entire mission, is to help generate more of these phone calls back and forth between the market.
Yeah. So what examples of sellers? So is that sort of like Angie's List?
No, so I mean, some of it might be through there. There's a lot of black box stuff that happens in terms of how these people generate the calls, right? Some of them are really just good at generating high performing web properties. So if you're a customer and you're looking for a plumber and you're just doing a Google search, you might end up on one of those properties. And then there's a local phone number placed on that website. So then you're like, oh, I'm going to call this phone number. So it could be like that. We also generate our own leads that way too, where we do SEM and SEO and all that stuff to create the fertile place to get good customers from. And the trick with all this is it has to be real time. So it can't be stale leads. Because a lot of people used to sell leads, like a book of leads to plumbers, but then they start calling those leads and those people don't even have a service anymore or a need anymore, right? They might have been from weeks ago. So that's a huge problem. We need this to be in real time. And we have on our side an auction network where somebody's calling, we know that they're calling, now we need to go find a buyer. So we're looking for all the service providers within our network and selecting the one that most fits the need. And that all needs to happen in a matter of a couple of seconds max, so that the phone can just go through, and the relationship needs to be instant almost.
Yep, especially because like when you see with people who like sell leads, it's like, okay, there's big data providers and like data privacy doesn't really exist. So we know exactly who was searching what terminology if somebody's looking for a plumber. But by the time that gets down to whoever, that data is oftentimes 24, 48, 36 hours delayed. And if I'm calling a plumber, I probably have an emergency right here, right now.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you're trying to create a relationship between a buyer and a seller, you want that relationship to be fruitful long term. So you kind of want both sides to be happy with what happened, which means that you can't just get cold called by a random plumber. You need to get connected to someone who actually cares. And, we coach all of our clients with best practices, and we've got a ton of white papers about this stuff, like what makes it to where you are successful in our system. And really it comes down to a couple of basic things. And it's about how do you answer the phone in a professional and courteous manner and quickly, and then articulate why you're a good fit. So it's simply like representing your business in an honest way, so that that potential customer is like, okay, I'm willing to have you come and book an appointment and come into my home, because it's pretty personal. At the end of the day, you're not just buying some random thing. This is a person coming over to your house who's potentially providing a service. So yeah, I think it's like that human to human connection is what these businesses need to be good at articulating on the phone.
Yeah. So when you guys are working with local businesses, what are the common misconceptions that you're running into when it comes to the pay-per-call marketing channel?
I think one misconception often is that, oh, it seems expensive, right? But expensive is a very relative term. It's expensive to what? So what is your return on investment? That's what really matters at the end of the day. And there are certainly clients that we can't work with because they're not in a growth mindset yet. And maybe they will be. But let's say you have, a small plumbing business, you've got a couple of trucks, you're thinking about expanding. So you need advertising and marketing to get you to that next level. Right. Well, you're going to be looking at what is my return on investment for all of these marketing channels that I'm trying. And you might be doing the Angie's List or the whatever's. And you might look at something like ServiceDirect and see a pay-per-call price. And all of our clients can set their own price per call, right? But so the natural inclination is, well, how low can I set it and still get calls? But that's not really a growth mindset. The growth mindset is when I buy these calls and I convert them, what is the rate at which I'm converting them, and how much is my return on that investment? And you need to be able to track that. So a lot of our most successful clients have somebody in the office who's tasked with that job. Maybe it's an office manager, or maybe it's a marketing person, or just like somebody sales and growth oriented at the company. right? But if it's just the random plumber answering it in the middle of a job, that gets a lot harder to do.
Yep.
And so you need someone who can articulate to their own business why spending $75 on an HVAC call, or $85 on a plumbing call, or whatever it is in that metro area is worth it. And for tiny little jobs, it might not be worth it. But if you're good at creating a relationship with this potential customer, you're going to have a lifetime value from that. And so that's kind of on the business to execute on that side. We just bring them legitimate, real customers. And, anytime that there's something bad, like a spam call or a wrong number or things like that, our clients don't pay for that. And mostly our technology weeds those out. So we've been, doing a lot of things under the hood to make sure that that experience goes smoothly. And that's our job, is to just bring them good quality potential customers.
And I think that's one of the things that is starting to have to shift for smaller businesses who haven't maybe had to invest in marketing yet, and they're just starting to, is like, yes, to some degree this is a cost, but this is also an investment. Mm-hmm. And how well your investment works also depends on how good you are at customer service, at closing sales, at customer retention. So totally. Your first job is $500 and you spend $200 on acquiring that customer, that's not a huge profit margin left. But are you good at retaining that customer long term? Mm-hmm. And if they stay with you for 5-10 years, you're probably going to get a decent number of calls, and your ROI is going to significantly increase over time, even though the ROI may be to some degree 1-to-1 on day one.
Yeah, and there's a lot of intangibles in there too that you can learn a lot about your market through these types of marketing efforts, especially with pay-per-call. You're specifying which zip codes that you're going to be receiving calls in and paying for calls in. But what that also tells you is, where could you potentially expand to? So there are neighboring zip codes potentially where you could actually be making quite a bit of money and no one's really competing in that. And we have that data. So we know we can suggest areas of growth for the growth-minded companies who are looking to expand their trucks, but they're not quite sure, okay, where should I really focus my efforts? Well, there's a lot of data under the hood that we can surface.
Yeah, and it makes expansion not be a guessing game, because you have these small businesses where their couple have 3, 4, 5 trucks, and they have to kind of figure out they can't serve anybody and everybody in the greater Atlanta area, because Atlanta is massive. But what other zip code can I expand to intentionally? Because the current zip codes I'm in, we either have a great footprint there, and there's not a ton of room to grow within there. So where do I intentionally expand to?
Yeah.
So with the pay-per-call method, why is it so much better than maybe traditional PPC or form fills?
Yeah, I mean, form fills, they're just so stale. And, most people, they're also selling that same form to a bunch of different people at the same time.
Hey guys, real quick, this episode is sponsored by Perison Network. Perison Network is a matchmaking service that connects businesses to marketing agencies that will actually get you results. There's over 50,000 agencies in the United States alone, and picking the right one can feel, pretty impossible. Perison Network simplifies the entire process by doing all of the vetting for you. From the initial agency search to interviewing and vetting the top marketing agencies to getting proposals and helping you with the discovery call, Perison Network does it all. This way, you end up partnering with a marketing agency that actually delivers outcomes, not empty promises. If you're ready to stop wasting money on marketing that just doesn't work, visit perisonnetwork.com and get your free agency search started today. That's perisonnetwork.com, PERISSON network.com.
So that's kind of problematic. You're already on the back foot. Whereas with a phone, it's a unique phone call going just to you. So if your cost per lead that you've set as a business is the winning bid in that market, then you get that phone call and no one else does. So there's a very unique opportunity that you have there. Whereas forms, if you're not back on them within a few minutes, really realistically, they're already gone. So that's a lot of chasing things that may not be the best use of your time. Whereas if you get somebody on the phone and you're good at, your phone manners and you're good at representing your business, you have a very good chance of booking that appointment. And even if you don't book it right then, you have an opportunity. Like now you have a real customer that is a real person, not just a random bot, filling out forms online, or the resellers. So we kind of take out the reseller part of it and we make sure that it's a genuine person calling. So I think that's a huge benefit. And if we try to put ourselves in the shoes of growing small businesses like this. And we have all friends who are in these exact situations where they're growing their small businesses. Then they just don't have time to go chasing stuff. They need good quality incoming. So they'd rather pay a little bit more to get high quality incoming and put their efforts into that. And then PPC, I think it's just harder than people think it is. They see like, oh, a click, it just costs this much. And eventually you end up with a customer at the end of that click. And it's just not that simple. But also you got to think about the opportunity cost. Are you spending time running your business and growing your business? Or are you spending your time, trying to watch YouTube videos on how to do PPC? And both of those might be the right fit for somebody. But for the clientele that we work with, they need to focus on growing their business because they're excellent at that. And they need to compete in their market against other people who are excellent at that. So, a lot of them will hire marketing agencies, and these can work in tandem. It doesn't mean you just do one or the other. So it's very good for them to have high quality websites of their own and do like good quality marketing efforts aside from pay-per-call too. But pay-per-call is just, in my mind, it's irreplaceable. And we see the data of like how well it works. And obviously I work there, I'm helping build it, so I'm going to be biased, but the data also doesn't lie. And we share that data on our website. We have resources and we do a lot of surveys and white papers about this topic. So if anyone's interested, they can see a lot about that and just learn about how the space works and why it's interesting.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, like, especially with smaller local businesses, it's, yes, you need leads here, right now, 24/7. But at the same time, you need to be thinking of your business as a brand as a whole, of like, okay, you should still have a good website because people are going to check you out after you get off the phone. You're still going to get referrals and your website needs to look good. Your social media needs to look good. And so you should be having kind of like the brand long-term foundations that are like a longer play, but you also need something like this or ads, or pick your thing that's going to bring you leads right here, right now. It's not one or the other, it's both at the same time.
Definitely. Yeah. And same thing with, at the end of all that, you're just going to need to do a really good job and represent your business well, but then put your name proudly on whatever work that you do. So it doesn't matter if you're a street sweeper or whatever it is that you do in life, you better do it to a degree where you're proud to put your own name on it. And I think those are the businesses that bubble to the surface. And those are the ones that get good reviews. Those are the ones that get recommended from friends and family, and they can organically grow their business. So then when they work with somebody like us, they get to specify their campaign schedule and the hours of times that they want to receive calls. You might realize that after hours might be a cheap time for you to acquire calls because there's fewer competition for those calls. So if you're smart about it, you can be strategic and access calls at a lower price, and then just make sure that you could either hire a phone answering service to be 24 hours a day answering it on your behalf, even if it's not someone in your office, right? So there's certain things you can outsource and teach those outsourced agencies, like, this is how you represent my business. All I need you to do is get an appointment booked or make sure that I get the phone number of that person so I can call them back the minute that I'm in the office the next morning. So there's ways to kind of dial up and down the level of spending that you have. And some of it might be seasonal. So there's lots of reasons why you might want to grow or shrink your lead volume. And we try to empower people with that, with our tools.
Yeah. And I think it also gives you the ability to expand into different, not just different geographies, but different services as well.
For sure.
Like if you offer 10 different services, and you can do everything from plumbing to maybe siding to yard work, and you have a ton of plumbing clients, but you're tired of looking at people's toilets, gives you an opportunity to expand, because the referrals that are coming in right now for you are all going to be plumbing related. So it gives you kind of the opportunity to branch out into other services. And like, if you wanted to get more jobs that paid more, okay, we're going to answer the phones at night, because that's most likely going to be an emergency service job that we can charge 2 to 3x the price on.
Yeah, I think overall, just empowering people with information that helps them grow their business, that's kind of the core of what we're trying to offer. And then same thing on the seller side. So if we call them affiliates, but if you're an affiliate and you have these high performing web properties or ways that you're generating the traffic, you need to know which of the calls that you've generated were the highest quality, so that you can go and seek out more of those. So we enable all of our affiliates, they have their own platform that they log into, and they see the same transparent data that our client side sees. So regardless of which side of the marketplace they're on, they're getting that same actionable data so that they can go do their job better. And that makes everyone happy in this like equation, including us, obviously, because we're in the middle of it. But we need both sides to be happy and trying their best to improve quality.
So you've been in business for a while now. How have you seen customer behavior shift over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I think a lot of people just want everything like instantly, and they're also used to kind of shopping around quite a bit. So with the rise of lots of review sites and things like that, the customer is more educated. They're not just going to look at some advertisement in the back of the newspaper and just assume that that's going to work. So I think that there is a more discerning customer base, and I think the trick is, and it's not a trick, it's just a strategy, but the idea is, are you the right fit for that customer? Because you're not going to be the right fit for everyone. So why even bother trying to, force those customers when in fact what you really should be doing is doing an exceptional job on the ones that are the right fit. So as a business, you need to decide that, and maybe that grows and changes over time. But I think customers are much more discerning these days. And I know in my own home improvement projects and other things that I do, I'm constantly looking at essentially judging whether these companies are the right fit for me and what's my chance of success. So I think that's totally different than the way it was even 5 years ago. But then you need to do that in a very quick and instant manner. And you see that now with like AI searches and optimizing for AI search, and trying to get your brand and your name to come up in those situations so that you can be in the conversation. And I think 100%. That's something that small businesses are really both empowered by, but also they're scared by it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think speed to lead is becoming more and more important. And how, like you had mentioned with the trainings that you guys do with your local businesses, of like, how do we build this into a relationship? Because people have all the information. 20 years ago, when the internet was like trying to figure out what it was a shortage of information. Now we have a shortage of trust. The information's all there.
And part of it was the overload of information, because back in the day, you could kind of game the system. And obviously, search engines like Google and others were always trying to be a step ahead of it, because they realized that people were putting up landing pages and throwing SEO keywords all over the place and trying to game the system, right? But at the end of the day, the customer who's really looking for a service was unhappy because they got tricked along the way. So that did not serve Google's purpose, and it didn't serve the customer's purpose. And now I think it's a lot harder to trick the system. So to get a real live customer on the phone, I think is a much higher level of quality than landing pages used to be.
Yep. And also, even if you have the best landing pages and the best ads and somebody gives you their information, you still have to call them back and pray and hope and cross your fingers that they actually pick up an answer. Yeah. And that also it's not their kids answering, and it's the right time of the day, and they haven't gone on to the next person. Yeah. And it's like, you should like still have the forms for like, depending on like what your service is that you're offering, still have like the click to call buttons on your website, but also be thinking about what are the other channels that I need depending on my business model that are going to get me leads right here, right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So my question for you is, we talked a lot about you guys helping local businesses. grow, scale. What have you guys done to grow and scale y'all's business? Because for the past 7 years, you guys have been on the Inc. 5000 list for fastest growing companies in the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. And that it's always such a challenge of how fast do you grow, and that's something that our board and our leadership and us, we all talk about. And I think one of the things that's really helped is finding really quality people to work with and being willing to, pay for that talent, but also nurture that talent.
Yep.
And to kind of offer things beyond just the pay and benefits and things like that, but also provide opportunity to make a meaningful difference. Because at the end of the day, you spend so much of your time working. What does that work actually result in? And, are you just trying to job hop, or are you trying to put down roots somewhere and help something grow? So for us, I think our growth and our quality has come from people that we've managed to attract and keep. So I think that's one of the things we're the most proud of, is even interns that come in who elevate themselves and care about our business and want to learn and are curious. They have opportunities to actually do stuff, and they'll get jumped into real projects. So I think we've been very intentional about that, and that's resulted in, I think, the highest quality of people that I've ever worked with. And I've seen, I used to do my own agency, like design and branding and user experience. So I've worked with a lot of different companies, the different sizes, and a lot of them talk the talk, and few of them can actually execute long term on that company culture. And it's hard. The bigger you grow and the faster you go, the harder it is to keep that intact. So I think you just need to constantly check in with yourselves and recommit to that idea. So I think we've been really good with our all hands meetings, where we're very transparent about everything to all of our employees, so that they can feel like they're part of it and there's nothing hidden behind the wall. And what they do every day actually matters. So I think that's been the success for a kind of sustainable type of growth.
Yeah,
not burning each other out.
Yeah, what do you do with your employees to kind of create a culture where they want to stay long term outside of the pay and benefits? Like, what are you doing to? I think the word you used was nurture them. Like, what are you doing to pour into them?
I think having the ceiling is kind of wide open to grow into areas, and almost everyone at our company has come up through different levels, and we're not so vertical. Like, a lot of it is you're going to have your hands in lots of different pies, but I think your responsibilities grow and your impact grows the longer you commit to the company. And a lot of places, I feel like you have to leave the company to get an opportunity like that. So I've seen it in so many places where somebody comes in at a title and, they work there for a year and then they're gone, which means that the company really loses in that scenario. Because instead of having someone who's really dedicated and is going to grow, and the sheer amount of cost that it requires to replace a person and start all over again, and you never really know what you're going to get. Oftentimes it's another person job hopping coming in that you're hiring, hoping that they'll stay there, but then they really aren't that committed. So for us, I think just not having high turnover with our team is critical, because just explaining the engine of how all this technology works under the hood, it's complicated. And so onboarding new people takes forever, and they really need to kind of experience it by doing it. So we do a lot of ride-alongs. And I think what I found really helpful is people realize, like, oh, like, I'm making a difference. Like, what I thought was a little bit of work is actually very meaningful to the success of this business. And then you extrapolate that out and you see who you're impacting. And it's all these small businesses all across the country who are thankful that you exist. That's an awesome way to wake up and do something. And obviously it's still a job, it's still corporate in some ways, but it has real tangible impact. And that's something that retains people. And then, of course, we are very competitive with all the other stuff that you need to do, like to attract top talent. So we're not going to compromise on that. But that top talent actually has something to do that means something at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think what it sounds like is you guys also do a good job of hiring from within.
Definitely.
Promoting people in a way where it's not necessarily just a job title, but it's, hey, here's new responsibilities, or also, do you want to shift into a different subsector of XYZ industry that or vertical that we have?
Yeah, and usually, like when we're hiring, which we're pretty much always hiring, one of the things that I think is critical is how much curiosity does someone have, and how much genuine interest do they have in kind of growing beyond their own boundaries, whatever those are. Like you can be elite at certain skills, and that's awesome. We'll take that. But then are you also curious about how else you can impact a company? So we have, I guess, a lot of unicorns really in our world, because everyone does feel kind of naturally curious. And then once you're in the system and you're working side by side with people, you get to know what they do, and then you're interested in what they do. So that might lead you down a road that you didn't think you were going to go down in the past. I think that's been really cool. And in my role, like I pretty much go all across the org. So I'm seeing what kind of everybody is up to. And that's very gratifying to me to participate and see what they do, and be able to learn how do we enable this business to grow because of the expertise that's being offered from within. So it's not a top-down decisions all the time. It's really bubbling up from the bottom.
Yeah. So with that, with having employees that are naturally curious, and that happens when you're marketing and tech, hopefully, fingers crossed, it should. How do you guys go about creating capacity and space and the tools and resources for team members to go out and do R&D and research and development and go learn new skills, new tasks? Not necessarily AI, because everybody's having to be forced to do an AI budget right now for R&D. But in other areas, if someone's like, okay, I want to go explore XYZ, how do you help them create the capacity, tools, resources to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of our foundational principles, and it's kind of an expectation, really. Like you're going to have to bring your own growth to the table based on your interests. But we then, as a company, need to support that by enabling the time to do it, and then also the resources to do it. So we'll pay for the trainings, or we'll pay for the time to be together with other people to have summits and things like that. So based on all the different teams, they all have their own ways of doing it. But essentially, like we see that there is an ROI to that that's almost intangible. And as a company, we need to support that all the time, because at some point it comes back around. And that's also one of those things that the more you're learning in your life and the more motivated you feel intrinsically, the more likely you are to be effective at work. And it doesn't mean total number of hours. It means truly effective. So maybe you do something now in 2 hours that otherwise would have taken you 5, or maybe you're so focused and dialed in that, you know, your effort is resulting in higher work productivity without burning you out. Like we need our people to be around for the long term. So all of our benefits and things like that are centered around that. And lots of our team members have families, and that flexibility to live your life, but then also to contribute to work. We trust people to balance that out, and we have no shortage of work. That's for sure. You know, and everyone is aware of that, but we're also good about not, you know, like whipping people into like just trying to achieve goals for goals' sake. The goals are always going to be there. And part of us as the leadership team and the product team, we need to decide like where to put our limited resources and prioritize.
Yeah. So it sounds like kind of like we were talking about with marketing earlier. It's like you have to invest, and the ROI may not be there immediately because there's a learning curve, but the ROI pays off in the long run. So it's like you invest in somebody now, and maybe you give them a couple extra $100,000 to go learn XYZ skill. And it doesn't give the company immediate ROI. In fact, it may give them a loss or a deficit, but in the long term, because you, one, upskilled that person, and two, you're going to increase employee retention, the ROI is still there long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I love it. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on this show. For everyone tuning in today, thank you so much for joining, and we will catch you on the next episode of Humans of Growth.